Do you think like the Caribbean in itself is really united?
This morning I was thinking that, okay, this is Sahara dust. If Sahara dust could reach Trinidad, you think Africans needed Columbus to tell them how to get here?
No, there was Africans here already.
Of course, and that's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point. So if you, according to Ivan Van Satum, if you release a stick, you'll end up here from Africa because of how the currents move.
Greetings, good people, and welcome back to my channel. I'm African Tigress, and today I'm hosting someone special on this YouTube channel. I'm in Trinidad right now. I'm at the Carnival village, and while I was walking around the Carnival village, I came across this interesting man here, and he has some interesting pieces and interesting knowledge, and I felt that it would be selfish of me if I don't share that with all of you. So let's allow him to introduce himself. Hello.
Greetings, hello. Pleasant good morning from Trinidad and Tobago, the Mecca of the arts.
The Mecca of the arts. Okay.
I am Omidira Kali Kodo K Ogunlade, and I'm a leather artist.
Wait, Oyo? Omi? Dira? Kali?
Kodo? K Ogunlade.
What does your name mean?
Well, I am a Orisha devotee, right?
Oh?
I'm Orisha devotee.
You are Owushe?
I am an Orisha devotee.
Oh, Orisha.
Orisha comes out of Ifa, Yoruba, Nigeria.
Okay.
Right? So to answer your question, Omidira says that there's water in the family. Okay. Which acknowledges me as a child of Oshun. I'm a priest of Oshun. Okay. I got that name in Nigeria. Okay. Right? I reclaimed my name decades ago in Canada. Right? And I thought that was Kali K. Now Kali, just after Ruth started the show on TV, I reclaimed my name legally. Kali is cross-cultural meaning. I met a brother from Senegal when he lived in Chicago. Yeah. And he picked up one of my business cards and he said, oh, you're the judge. I said, no, I'm an artist. He says, no, you're the judge. He said, look, I am Wolof. And I'm only Wolof. Khali means the judge. Okay. And then in the Hindu belief system, they have Kali, Kali, and also Kali Durgi, which in a sense, which is actually a road, an aspect of Oshun. Right? So again, I'm also making connections here. I had a friend from University of Toronto who is from the Xhosa, right? And she was telling me that Kali means that he's a dear friend, one who never gives up. All right. And all of that is aspects of who I am. All right. Now, Kodo, I got through a rites of passage in Chicago. Among the Arkan belief speaking people, every day of the week has a certain attribute. I was born on a Monday, and Monday is the day of the peacemaker, right? So a male born on a Monday names Kodo, okay, and a female is Ajoa, right? So all of that is part of who I am. Ogunlade, again, pertains to Ogun. Ogun is the god of iron. Ogun is the one who is the engine room behind everything we do. Okay. Right? Ogun is the heart. And even that, whatever makes it move, that's Ogun energy. And Ogunlade is the one who wears the crown. Is the one who goes before us with his machete, cutting left and right, removing obstacles from our path. It is he and he alone who makes a way, especially when, and particularly where there appears to be no way. So the interesting thing about names is that our names are much bigger than that which we answer to when called. And the enslavers knew that. So they stripped us of our names and gave us theirs, that which we answer to when called. Right? Because whenever you call a name, you invoke this presence of the ancestors who bore that name. Okay. So when we call our African names, we invoke the presence of our ancestors. All right. But when we call, or someone calls us by a European name, we answer to that. Who do we invoke? The ancestors of the European. Yeah. Right. And the thing is, we know basically we could trace where those names came from and the attributes of those who carry those names. But still, we bring that entity back to life every time that name is called. Can you imagine the power of this place called Trinidad and Tobago, right? If when we call an African person, an African name, we invoke the ancestors, because our names also disciplines us. Because if my parents knew that I was a peacemaker, then they would have used that to discipline me.
Yeah.
See, if I did something opposite that, they said, Kali, no. A peacemaker would not do that. You understand?
Yeah.
And that's the power of our names. So when I was in Nigeria, in fact, I arrived, I was 4 or 5 days after I landed, because I had to be stripped of the Eurocentric baggage so I could see Africa through the eyes of an African. And the moment that happened, I knew that I could never leave Africa, because now Africa, it was really connected. And I started hearing a lot of noise in my head. And every so often a voice is going to cut through the noise, bringing me a particular message. And after living abroad for 42 years, I returned to Trinidad in 2017. And when I came back, a distinct voice came demanding that we of the Ifa community, we reclaim our names and we legalize our names. And then I started on a campaign sending letters to different members of the government so that they could use their legal apparatus to grant deeds of poll to us in the Ifa community so that we could legalize our names. But then, as with the bureaucracy, they haven't gone anywhere, but they haven't given up.
Oh, okay. So you haven't been able to legally change the name yet?
Well, my name is I legally changed I'm not change. I really reclaim my name. I don't say change because you changed what was yours.
Okay. So did you legally claim your name?
My name decades ago. I did this in Canada in 1982.
All right. Well, how did you get this? Was this from like your father? Was this something that was passed down from your parents, maybe?
No, that's what I'm saying. Because the thing is that I do not pronounce the name I had because I no longer recognize it. But the name that our parents had wasn't their names. If you go back to Malcolm, it's the same story.
Yeah.
That's when it was given, right? But we have to reclaim our names, we have to reclaim who we are. And sometimes the easiest thing to do is again to go back with the day that you were born. Because that doesn't change.
Yeah.
And the attributes of that doesn't change. So it's a good place to begin to start calling the essence of who you are into being.
Okay.
And it opens up the door to go deeper with it. Hence, my journey back to my ancestors or what they did, which is African, which was Yoruba, African sacred science, right? So it's something that I know it was good enough for them, it's good enough for me.
So you consider yourself a Nigerian? Do you consider yourself a Nigerian?
I'm an African.
You're an African.
And because I was removed from the 400 years before I was born, it is my right to claim the entire continent without borders.
The entire continent without borders.
Right.
You Yoruba.
Well, Yoruba, because Yoruba is, Trinidad is the most southern island in the Caribbean. Okay. And a lot of Africans who were enslaved were taken from Yoruba land. Yeah. Right? And those who were brought here remained here, as opposed to other islands that was a place of hoarding, and then they take them to other parts of America. Right? But those who were brought here remain here. That's why this little dot that we call Trinidad and Tobago, that doesn't even appear on certain maps, has produced such greatness, because don't forget that they took the best out of Africa. Yeah. Because by people are not stupid, they would not take fools or lazy people to be enslaved. They take the best out of Africa. And that is in our DNA, so that don't change. Because when you look at the route that the ships took, there are sharks still removing those roots because that was a source of food. Mm-hmm. And we were that meal. You see? And that because that's in their DNA. And those are sharks. So a lot of the stuff is still in our DNA. So the intelligence, all of that, the creativity. So everything that we do, we're not learning it, we're remembering it.
All right.
You see?
All right.
So this conversation we have in here is by design. because it's part of making linkages now.
Yeah.
Part of making linkages. And that is what part of the process was, to divide us, to conquer us. But now, we are family. Because we suddenly say, oh, that person resembles such and such. Because we came from these families and we recognize the trait of the families. Because we all carry the features of our ancestors.
Yeah. Wow. So,
and you see, we haven't talked about the work yet.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the work yet. So let's talk a little bit about the work before we go deep into the conversation. Maybe you can tell us a little bit. I see some amazing stuff that you have here. Some I've never seen, like very, very unique. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what do you do.
The difficulty in me answering questions such as that is knowing where to go to begin the story, right? In growing up in Trinidad, our parents, especially our fathers, have this habit of asking us, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? So at 11, my father asked me that question, but I said, I want to be an artist, because I always found passion among doing creative things, right? So he said, oh, you have an ambition, you don't want to work, because that was the mindset. That being an artist is a person who lazy, who don't want to work, they have no ambition, right? So at 14, he asked me the question again. I said, I want to be an architect. And he was excited. So he had a friend who had a drafting school, he put me into that. And I excelled, I was doing very, very good. Because it was art, it was drawing. And then I went to Canada in 1975, right? And I started to study architecture. But one day I was in a classroom, and the professor was talking about calculating a beam to avoid tensile stress. And I went into a daydream. And somebody says to me, here you are, learning to become something, and you should find out who you are and what you are about. And I left school, I didn't go back.
Oh, wow.
Before that, I used to dance in Trinidad. I was a dancer. I used to write poetry and different things. I used to paint. So I went back into the arts. And one day in 1986, I decided to go back to school. And I applied as a mature student to York University in Toronto to study anthropology, African studies, right? And again, once I started doing that and started going through the subject materials and seeing certain things, again, I started hearing voices in my head. And at the time, you were deep in the struggle against apartheid, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted a bag to go to school with, to begin with. But I couldn't find a bag in the stores that I liked. Nor did I have the money to buy the bags that I did like. So, going back to my architect background, I drew the plans for the bag I wanted. Yeah. I went to a leather store and said, what do you need to buy to make this bag? And they told me, well, choose what leather I want. I chose the leather. I chose the implement. At that time, they had something they call an owl. It's a apparatus with a bobbin that's in a thing and a thread, and you push and pull to sew. Right? So I did all of that, and I made this bag. But the front of the bag, I had carved out the map of Africa, and the southern part of Africa with the hand in the air, and the bottom written a mandala. Yeah. And that is how I entered York University in 1987. And that was my transformation.
That's time apartheid was still going on?
Yes, that was my transformation. Because now people had identified with that bag, and people wanted bags. And again, I started hearing these messages in my head. And I was more taken up in the messages. And I saw the conflict in the messages I was hearing and what I was reading in a lot of these books. Because anthropology is one of the most problematic courses because of the assumptions made. A lot of the disasters, natural disasters in Africa, especially droughts, are caused by anthropologists. Okay. Because they will go in that community, white folks will go in that community, and sometimes it is students who want to get field knowledge. And they may see people going from, they're packing up and they're going from one area to the next. And they, with the Eurocentric view, think that, why are you doing that if you're going to look for water? Why not dig a well? And they have water. And they did that without consulting the people. And once there's water, people are trapped out to the water. And what happens is that people stay there because of the water, and the soil is depleted in terms of planting.
Yeah.
And then it becomes like a desert. But people understood how the season moved. So they pack up here and they go to another place and give the land a chance to build back itself, because they may go to a fishing village. And when the fish dries up, they come back to a village. So they were nomadic. But you see, Europeans thought being nomadic means that you have no place to live.
Yeah.
Not knowing that this is yours and this is yours. Not that it belongs to you, but you belong to this part and you take care of it.
Yeah.
Right? So all of that to say to you that that's part and parcel of what informs me into the work that I do. So when I started doing the work now, I started getting messages. I started hearing sounds. And each piece of work that I do here begins with a sound. And my interpretation of the song is evident in the finished piece. So sometimes, most of the time, I may do a piece of work, and I look at it and say, oh, wow, I didn't do that. Because I know distinctly that I, as an artist, I do not have the ability to create, but I'm a vessel through which the spirit of creativity flows. So for me, being an artist is to be in a constant state of spirit possession, possessed by the spirit of creativity. And I understand that quite well. So I don't allow ego to say, okay, I created this. No, I don't use that language. I can create nothing. All I can do is make the vessel conducive to want the spirit of creativity to move through it.
Oh, lovely, lovely.
See?
So do you mind if maybe you could show us some of the pieces around?
Okay.
Around, and then we'll continue again with the conversation.
So as we're here to begin with, I started off doing a lot of these neck pouches.
Yeah.
Right? The reason being is that the neck pouch was the first piece of artifact that I got from Africa.
Okay.
And I liked that neck pouch so much that when it started to fall apart, I started to repair it. And then I started to learn how to do it. So basically, neck pouch is based off a medicine pouch.
Yes, I've seen it here.
Yes. So when the men going in the bush and stuff, they'll put the herbs and different things inside of it.
Ah. Oh, okay. So this is it.
Right.
Oh, all right.
So all I did is I improved on that for different purposes. And being an artist now, I could take it to so many different places in terms of how the creativity moves through it. So this is just one of the pieces that I do frequently, and each piece I do is different.
Okay. Right? You don't do the same piece twice.
No, because the well is so vast, and because of the fact that it's like a fingerprint.
Yeah.
You all have fingers, but each print is different. So again, it's based on the spirit that comes through a particular time. So I can look at the piece that I've done throughout the years, and I can read it like a book, because it's like a diary. Right?
All right. So you document all your pieces?
Well, they are documented in the memory of the piece.
All right. All right. All right.
Yes, you can't have to go and write down everything. It's going to be too much. However, when a person comes for a piece, what I do then is the sound that I heard in doing the piece and the message that came with the piece, it's regurgitated. I give them back to the person.
Oh.
And every time that is done, and I've been doing this for about 35 years now, the person who receives the piece said that's exactly what they're going through. You see? And that's the spiritual essence of the work. The work is spirit because the art where healing takes place.
All right.
So my company is called KENYAN African Arts.
Okay.
Because African art is a profound dialogue. Because African art is healing art. So if you have a spoon and the spoon is elaborately carved, you don't just put the spoon on the wall and say that's your art. It's meant to cook with.
Yes.
But the design on it is to put that energy into your food. You see, but the Europeans now come and say, and they tell you what art is. But we have functional art because it's medicine. Even the clothes that you wear tells a story. The colors tells a story. So all of that is part of what was taken from us. Because if you look at European companies, look at the colors in the logos, because they know what those colors mean. Because they took it out of us. Because they found that all that was too powerful for we to have. So they kept it among themselves. So all of that informs the work. So that the work each line, each mark, each dot is part of a story. For instance, this is another neck pouch, right?
Yeah, so beautiful.
So the thing about it is that once I am very careful when I'm applying the dyes to the work.
Okay.
So when I put the brush in the dye, I clean the brush off at the opposite end of the bottle, so the brush doesn't get dyes to mess up the work. But one day I was working, and somehow the paintbrush just tipped the leather and left a mark, and automatically I heard the message, and the message is saying to me, now this represents your ancestors.
Oh.
So whenever you see the dots in the work, it represents the ancestors, those whose shoulders we stand on to be where we are, to do what we're here to do. Right? So the dots are not part of an artistic or creative teaching. It represents our ancestors.
So even the white dots I see here over here.
Yes, well, these now, you see, in life, people either assist us or they detract us.
Yeah.
Right? Now these represent entities that you meet along the path that you move, right? For instance, these are 3 dots, and again it goes back to the Yoruba teachings now, because everything we do, we have to seek permission, or we have to consult with Eshu, because Eshu is a guardian, right? Eshu opens up the way to anything, and Eshu is number 3. So this represents that Eshu energy. So does this, right?
All right.
Because Eshu is also the crossroads. So this represents that entity, right? That we have to go through. Sometimes what we are called to do, and the bars that are represented here all over, right?
Yeah.
The bars reminds us that we are trapped by different things. We are trapped by poverty. We are trapped by wealth. The bars further tells us that the things we claim to own on this earth actually owns us, because all we own is integrity, and even that becomes elusive. The difference between the rich and the poor is the quality of bars that we have. So you go to a poor man's home and you may have just straight bars.
Okay.
You go to a rich man's home, you have some fancy bars, but he's still in prison. And sometimes they're more in prison than us because they want to protect.
Yeah, you're right.
So all of that. So you could look at the piece and you could read. Once you know what are them, you can read the piece. This is ostrich leather. Whenever I use ostrich or any kind of rough leather,
yeah,
the message is, even though life is rough,
yeah,
it doesn't mean that life is bad. Because when we are driving and the road is rough, what do? We slow down.
Yeah, we slow down.
Sometimes we change gears, sometimes we stop and we strategize.
Yeah.
But when things happen in our personal lives, you want to speed up and do a lot of things. And this is the message. It's not because life is rough, life is bad. Sometimes the roughness is medicine. You can tell you, wait a minute, maybe I should think this over. Maybe I should stop, maybe I should change gears. That is the message. So you see, African art is not just at this or just at that. Because once you see that, you reduce the impact of a thing. You see, so sometimes the African person with jewelry is more than that. It's protection. This could be a weapon. You follow?
Yeah.
And that is how we have things hidden in plain sight. Again, going back to the name, I am Omidira Kali Kodoke Ogunlade. That name is my protection. That's my shield.
Yeah.
It's also my spear.
For those ones who didn't get it, here it is Omidira Kali Kodoke Ogunlade.
Asheo. Perfectly. So here now, I came across some wooden mask while I was in Chicago decades ago. I started to feel energy off of them. Mm-hmm. So then I started to fuse the wooden mask with the wood. You see, so again, everything connects.
Yeah.
So it's making that connection, because when I started doing the art, the wearable art, especially with leather, I started to imagine what would have happened to the leather industry in Africa had there not been the interruption of enslavement. And then
it would have been big.
And then it occurred to me, through Africans on the continent of prominence who have purchased my work, right? And then hearing them speak, I said to myself, well, the work is continuing, because here I am 400 years later, and I have other brothers in the States who are still working on leather at this level. However, they use machines, but everything I do is by hand. But we are doing the work at a higher level. So which means that we are continuing from where the interruption took place.
All right.
Right? Because all of we, as you say, all of we is one. You see?
So everything handmade?
Yes, everything is handmade. I use no machinery.
All right. I'm a little bit curious before we just check around.
Okay, my altar.
Oh, this is your altar.
This is my altar.
Yeah.
In fact, there are many altars in this space, because this is sacred space.
Okay.
Because don't forget, art is where healing takes place.
All right.
And when you talk about healing, you have to talk about spirituality, because healing is not religious; it is spiritual.
Okay.
It is connecting different forces, right? To reconnect, so that we could be at our higher self. So with that now, as much as I am doing that, there are entities who want to counteract that, who does not want that to take place. You can't forget that, as in life, there are people who don't like us, who do not want to see us succeed. Just as in the spiritual realm, there are entities who does not want us to succeed, because it messes up their play day.
Okay.
You follow? So I have to be responsible now to those who come into this space.
Okay.
You see? So because of that now, this is a spiritual space. My ancestors are here. The Orishas are here. And I always present a banquet for them to show my appreciation. Because part of the African way is that when someone comes in their home, you offer them something.
Food.
Right.
All the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You understand? So this is, again, part of that connectivity.
All right.
You see?
All right. So maybe we can just highlight some few pieces quickly.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a pillow.
Okay, this piece here is a pillow, yes, but not a pillow that you're going to lie down on and stuff like that. A pillow gives comfort.
Yeah.
So this piece is called Ascension, right?
Ascension.
Now, this represents East Africa.
I see. Yeah, I saw this, and I'm like, this is East Africa.
Right. So they took us from here.
Yeah.
And they captured us. And they bound us. And they took us into a ship.
Oh,
and packed us like sardines in a can.
Yeah, I see the ship.
But they could not enslave our spirits. Because you never accept that you're a slave. You want to see that you're enslaved.
Yeah.
So, because they couldn't enslave our spirits, we kept ascending. Hence, ascension. So, in order now to heal from the wound of enslavement, we have to, in a sense, go back through what we have already been through. And that is pain. So, the idea of the pillow gives us that comfort as we go through that.
Yeah.
But then you see what happens, that sometimes comfort could be a dangerous thing. You could sleep and get the rest we need and then get up. But if we stay in bed too long and get too comfortable, the day goes by.
Yeah.
So it could be a dangerous thing. And we have become lulled into this idea of comfort. That's why we still are where we are. This piece here is called the picnic.
Under a tree?
Yes, that's based on an original photograph of Africans lynched.
Oh.
And that was the picnic.
Okay.
So the term you always use talking about picnic, that is where it came from.
For real?
Because picnic, you see, every word have a meaning and a beginning. So picnic is to, okay, for instance, the Europeans were sitting on the grass.
Yeah.
With the children and the food and stuff, like you do as you usually picnic.
Yeah.
But for entertainment, they string up Africans So they pick, so that's a picnic.
What? I didn't know that.
Just as how we use the word SIR. SIR is an acronym. When the monarchies and they put you in the needle in front of them and they take the sword and do this, what they're actually doing is they are simulating cutting your neck off. But they didn't. So now your life belongs to the person who's doing that. So they say, arise, sir, so and so. So the sir means slave, I remain.
Wow.
You follow?
Ooh.
So a lot of words we use, like I have even gone to the extreme that I have reverted back to using the K as opposed to the C. Because the C is a recent
in what words do you use K?
Wherever you could use.
Oh, like Africa with K.
Right. But even that is we still talking about Alkibulan. Right? Okay, any word that you can spell with a K that spells with a C, spell it with a K and see the impact. And in fact, feel the impact of that word. Because you bring out the power in that word.
Okay.
You bring life to that word. Because the K was always there. And any word that you find, most words that you find that spells with a C and the K doesn't fit in, most of the time those words didn't exist because those ideas did not exist.
Ah, all right.
I would like try. Doesn't exist.
As you're talking, I'm actually thinking of some names, and I'm like,
in your language.
Yeah.
Your language. There's a lot of.
No,
words
we don't. C does not. For instance, in Kiswahili, C does not exist independently. It only exists with H.
Right.
Yeah. So C in Kiswahili is CH. There's no C alone. Yeah.
Right. You see, so even stuff as quote unquote simple as that may be, it has impact. And again, that goes back to spirituality of things. You see, one, you want to take away the power. And if a person wants to do that, for whose benefit is that? Is it yours or theirs? And that's another way of controlling the narrative, controlling the thing from taking place.
All right. I love the message I'm seeing here. I'm an African, not because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me.
Yes.
Love that.
That is the thing about it. That's the thing about it. Because you see, there's this whole debate about, because for instance, the Nigerian is Nigerian.
Yeah.
The Nigerian doesn't want to be Ghanaian because the Ghanaian is Ghanaian.
Yeah.
But they're both Africans.
Yeah.
That's no longer debate, right? But you see, we still grappling with who we are. And then we allow the politics of the area to define who we are. You see, but we have to go back to the root.
Africa first.
Yeah, you have to go back to the root.
Yeah.
Recently, because of the behavior of our children in the school system, I was telling them this is the most important thing in this whole booth.
Black inventors
and inventions. Because our children are being told that they came from nothing, that they carry the name of the slave masters and stuff like that. But here they're using cell phones, not knowing that Africans invented the cell phone. All of these are day-to-day things that Africans invented. But the problem is that this invention has always been there, but with their European names attached to them. So the assumption was Europeans.
Or when you read the name, you would think it's
when you do research, you found out that it was African people.
Okay.
You see?
Yeah.
And this is my ancestral Ifa altar.
Oh, so these ones are not for sale?
These are for sale, yes.
Oh, okay.
Right. This represents that entity I talk about, issue. And all of these pieces are built on bottles. And the bottles tells me how the end result is going to be. So this was a black bottle. So that energy spoke to me in terms of what this piece was going to be.
What was the bottle?
The base.
Oh, okay.
The base is the bottle, but I know what I do. I wrap the bottles in leather.
Okay.
So even if it falls, the leather glues, it holds the bottle.
Tells the impact.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you got beautiful pieces.
Thank you.
Really, really beautiful pieces.
Thank you. And the Ogun, as in my name, this is a sword or adder, a cutlass.
Or the one that you said slashing
Right.
left,
So
right.
this represents Ogun's adder.
Ogun's adder.
Yeah, of course, adder is the Yoruba word for cutlass.
All right.
Right. So basically, I do installations and I do wearable art.
Do you have like social media presence or where someone can be able to
Facebook? But those things sometimes take away so much time.
Yeah.
You know. But I have a Facebook. I keep a Facebook presence.
Yeah.
It's a way of redistributing not just the work but the message.
What about people who are outside Africa? Not Africa, who are outside Trinidad and they would want to get.
I lived abroad for 42 years. I lived 20 years in Canada.
Yeah.
20 years in America.
Yeah.
So I have a client base of people who collect the book.
Okay.
Right. So I do a lot of stuff on Facebook and I reach out to those people.
Okay, so if someone wanted to reach out to you who's just seeing you for the first time, they can still get you on Facebook.
Yeah, my phone number is 868 390
1557.
And the major way of reaching me is through WhatsApp.
Through WhatsApp?
I could speak and also send images and what have you.
All right.
Yeah, when I first started in Canada, when I was looking for that piece of leather to make my first bag, I saw this piece of leather in the leather shop. And I said, what's the cost of this piece of leather? They said, man, you could just have that.
Really?
Right? Yeah, you could just have that. And I started to carve out my name, right?
Yeah.
And then two things happen. Again, everything connects. The steel pan is an invention coming out of Trinidad. It's the only instrument that's distinctly different from all instruments that was created in the 21st century. So much so that pan is more appreciated around the world than in Trinidad because of how they use the pan. They found that pan is very instrumental in education because it is not just, you see, we live in a physical world and whatever you do retains more memory than just thinking about or reading about it, right? Because when you do it, it involves all of you, and that's part of the science of art, right? And that's why art is so important, especially in our education system, right? So the greatness of the steel pan, that's one thing. When I was studying anthropology and African studies, and I came across the fact that in the production of the kente cloth, you see, Africans were doing trade with China and India and stuff. So they would import silk, fabric from India. And they would take the fabric apart, thread by thread. And then they will reweave it into the kente cloth. And I find that was part of the African genius.
Okay.
And that's what for the original kente. And I found it fitting as in terms of reconnection to have that genius draped in the genius of the steel pan.
Because the steel pan was also...
It was part of the African genius because of how the steel pan came about. Right? So even though one thing happened here and the other happened there, it was the same people doing it. Because everything we are the same people. Right? So and that gave birth to my logo.
To your logo. It's beautiful.
And the other thing too is that I was doing an event in Toronto. And this brother was going to York University. He came to the event. The first time he saw my sign, he said, "Oh, well done, well done." I said, "Thank you." He said, "No," and he pointed at my logo. He said, "Well done." I said, "What do you mean?" He said to me, "Keiko," as spelled, means in his language, "well done."
Oh!
You understand that?
In which language is that?
I'm not sure if it was tree or what it was. But what it is that stuck with me is he said to me that Keiko.
Means well done.
Because now I join it up to Keiko. Because it's supposed to be K company. Again, because you see I use the K.
I use
company,
K,
right? It was K company, like my company. But when he told me that, I started using Keiko as one word.
All right.
Because it reminds me now of that spirit, that energy that he brought to me.
Ah.
So again, it's a reaffirmation as to why I do what I do. So I have to do it either properly or I don't do it. That is why
you have to do it well done.
Yes.
It has to be well done art.
Yes. In this village, this is a lot to put up. Right? But my responsibility as an artist, because I never know who's going to come through the door. So once I say yes, I'm going to do it, I have to do it to the best of my ability. So people ask me, number one, they know I used to live abroad. They say, what are you doing here? Because I was supposed to come back home.
So do you feel like, do they feel like, are you downgraded by...
Right. They feel as though, well, I'm wasting my time here because I have a bigger market abroad and stuff like that. But you see, the gift I was given was not a business. It was a service to my people. And because of that, I have to be obedient. Because I know the penalty for being other than obedient. And the work that I do is much, much, much bigger than I am. If something is not bigger than I am, I would not do it. Because then it becomes ego-driven.
Yeah.
And I learned that a long time ago. You see?
Do something that is bigger than who you are.
Of course.
Otherwise, you'll be just nursing and feeding your ego.
Yes. And that's exactly what it is. You see, so for me now, that is why I set up the space as I set it up. Because it takes you around. Right?
Yeah. So, curious, I see you mentioned that you've been to Nigeria. A few years ago, there was like this movement of a lot of people from the diaspora moving back to the continent. Yeah.
The right to return.
The right to return. Is this something you see yourself doing?
Most definitely. Most definitely. I've always seen, okay, there was a triangle in the enslavement of us, right? Africa, Caribbean, America, right? They drop off enslaved Africans, they pick up rum, they take this here, they do that here, that triangle. I've always thought about using the same triangle, but for a healing purpose. You see? So I always see myself living in Africa and the Caribbean.
Okay.
Right? America, to me, have nothing to offer. It's an illusion. Right? And I figured that out. And again, as an artist, I'm very susceptible, sensitive to certain things. And I find that in America, it's very tense. And the blood, it is so thick that it's oozing out the street already. Because the amount of people America has wronged. And it's a place that I felt that for my quote-unquote sanity, I had to get out.
Okay.
Right? Canada, I'm a Canadian citizen, right? Canada is the opposite, but then same bird, different wing. Canada is more racist than America as far as I'm concerned. But one is, in America, the snakes are right in front of you. But in Canada, they're in the grass. They jump out at you when you're not looking. You're going to find a person who give you a big broad smile, but it's just a plastic smile. But in America, they will tell you, look, I don't like you, but let's do business together. You understand?
Yeah.
You can't say we don't like you, and that's it.
All right.
You see?
All right.
Yeah. And I learned those things. And when I came back home, 2017, when I came back home for good, automatically as I came off the airport, I started to live. As opposed to survive. I was surviving in abroad.
Okay. But
coming back home, I am living. You see? Trinidadians do not know the greatness of this place. Because they complain about everything. Everything is politics. And Trinidad for me is too small to be so political. And then what I call dotish or stupid politics. Petty stuff.
All right.
You know? And not doing things that are better the living conditions of the whole space. You see? So, and that's looking at it from an outsider looking in.
Okay.
Because you see right now what's happening. You see all that, the haze
Yeah.
And the Sahara dust.
Yeah, actually I was told that out there that's the Sahara dust, and so I'm like, all the way from Sahara desert.
There are two things about that. The first thing is that I'm in Trinidad and I'm walking on African soil.
Exactly.
You understand?
Yeah.
Secondly is I was walking here this morning, I was thinking that, okay, this is Sahara dust. If Sahara dust could reach to Trinidad, you think Africans needed Columbus to tell them how to get here?
No, there was Africans here already.
Of course, and that's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point. So if you, according to Ivan Van Santen, if you produce a stick, you'll end up here from Africa because of how the currents move.
Yeah.
You know, so again, that is so all these things, even though this may be a negative to other people in terms of the health issues,
yeah,
but it is blatant. It's a blatant education coming to us there. That if the dust could reach here, well, Africans reach here before. So,
so what do you think? You mentioned about political or politics, and you feel like Trinidad is so small to have like all this petty politics. Do you think like the Caribbean in itself is really united?
No, Caribbean is not united, but I think we're moving closer to it.
Okay.
It's united in, you see Trinidad Carnival?
Yeah.
Trinidad Carnival uniting the world.
Yeah.
Right? Because the power of the music, the power of, well, basically it is we. Because that's our African thing. That's what it is. Because the parade comes out of the many parades we have in Africa. The gala day, the this, the that, the other.
Yeah.
You see, all those parades, because the parade is there, and in remembering what we had, we use what we have here to simulate that. But that's the energy. The music is the energy, the driving force, is a possession. And that is spreading for the world. You guys saw what it did in Canada. So, Black Stallion, he passed away the other day, was a great Calypsonian. And he talked about the Caribbean man. He talked about Rastafari, of which I'm not. Rastafari connected the whole Caribbean. So maybe there's something that the Rastas know that the politicians don't know. Right?
Oh yeah, because Rastafari, whichever island they come from, they're united.
Right. So the thing is, there's a potential for unity, but again, the politics and the ego, because it was attempted before Eric Williams, Josh Chambers, and I think it was Manley, the Federation, right? But again, it is the colonial mentality, right? To keep separate so you have more power, because you still can't be okay. Then who's going to be president? You follow?
Yeah.
But I think under Dr. Rowley, this is from Barbados, Mia
Montley, yeah.
The brother in Guyana, right?
Yeah.
I think, and others coming on board, I think there's a stronger potential to see that federation come about.
Okay.
Because the Caribbean is small.
Yeah.
However, the Caribbean is big in terms of what comes out of the Caribbean. Because you see the whole music industry, the whole art industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Can I listen to your conversation?
Yeah, you can listen. Yeah, it's a whole multi-billion-dollar industry.
Okay.
Right? But we're playing with it. But you see, that is going to change a lot of things. You see the crime? We need something to counteract that crime. And we have to look at it spiritually. Now, don't forget, I said I am a Orisha devotee. So I know about spirit possession and stuff like that. Yeah. Now, a person who don't understand, they see a person possessed. They say, oh, that person is mad. Right? And if you're in a foreign space, they want to start treating you as a quote-unquote mad person, as opposed to a person possessed by a spirit.
Yeah.
Right? Now, there are the destructive spirits and there are constructive spirits. There are spirits who will help, who will heal. There are those who will harm. Now, Trinidad, long time, before I left here, I left here in 75. And I'm from South, so we had this thing called Latuse, or Sades, or Souls, whereby you go to the cemetery and you clean up the grave sites of your ancestors, right?
Yeah.
We may not use the term ancestor back then, but we talk about clean up your grave sites, right? But it was a way of paying tribute to the ancestors, right? But when I came back home now, I see they're celebrating Halloween. That Halloween is Halloween that. Now, if you understand what Halloween is, I live in Canada and I was shocked when I went in 75 and it is Halloween business. These little children dressed up in all these grotesque costumes and stuff like that, right? And again, looking at the power of character, that's behind you, that's a mask.
Yes.
We wear a mask for one of two reasons: to conceal who we are, but to become who we are not. Right?
Okay, yeah.
So when these little children of innocence dress up and take on the persona of these characters, these entities, don't forget to talk about the name and how it calls you into being.
Yeah.
So then you give life to these characters because the spirit holds the thing, And then if you do it often, and depending on your general behavior, these spirits now start to be fed. Because we feed these negative entities by how we behave. That's why I always tell people, this is a sacrifice here. When you burn food in your home, that's a sacrifice.
Even when you accidentally burn it?
Yes, that's a sacrifice.
Who's taking it?
Because accident is a big quota thing,
Okay.
Because like I said, as you come in here, it's accident, but I say it's by design.
It's by design.
When you have food spoiling in your fridge, right? That you see what that is you feed in negative entities. And if you don't name a source, who you give me that to is the lowest that takes it. And if you are constantly feeding those lower entities, they take up residence in your home. And when they find that your home going in chaos, I want to know why. It's because you're feeding these negative things.
Okay.
So likewise, it is not natural for a child to do the things children are doing. That has to be a spirit possession. But because the powers that be don't see it as a spirit possession, they don't see the spiritual connection. They see it as something other. And they treat it as something other that is taking place. And it's going to get worse until they start to look at it for what it is. And start dealing with what it is. Because the only way you can counteract that is by our behavior. Because you have to make the environment no longer conducive to those elements. Because, for instance, I used to do residencies abroad. Because there was a shooting in a place called Columbine in Colorado. And after that, they started bringing artists back in the school, right? But I told them I don't teach art. But when I could use the tools of an artist to bring about different things, because for me, creativity is a tool to problem solve, right? So I used to do these different programs. And I did an extensive amount of programs in, I did an extensive amount of programs in Wyoming, and I was in Kentucky. I had this thing called Everything Connects, right? Where I have the student have a conversation, but they're using paint, brushes, and a canvas. They're not speaking until I ask them a question. And I have them going and expressing the ideas on the canvas, noting that it's not an atlas. So if the first person goes up and do a circle, the other person have to connect to that circle. But you see, in the absence of words, we feel less vulnerable because no one knows what a circle means to that individual. But then another person goes up now and does something with the circle. And not knowing what that means to the first person, it causes a reaction. And then different people are going to do different things to it. And then at intervals I'll stop and say, okay, look at the canvas and tell me what you feel. And it always comes to that there's a feeling of anger. And I let them know that anger is the ego's shield for pain. So the point I'm getting at is, when you see a person very angry, most of the times you respond to the anger. But if you respond to that person as that person's in pain, you get a different reaction. Because see what happens then is you ignore the ego. And the ego likes to be entertained. But the ego cannot be educated. The ego does not grow. The ego's lifespan is the lifespan of this body. You follow? So that is the point I'm getting at. So that when you reconnect to the source of the thing, especially for children on crime, then the ego is going to let go its hold on them. And those spirits will no longer be fed. And once we clean up the environment by how we behave, by the way we speak, by the way we think, by the music we listen to, because right now today, I hear a lot of music, it is basically abuse. Sometimes I tell some of these taxi drivers, I say, look, this is a passenger vehicle, not private use. And the music they play is not for private, it's not for public consumption. Because I'm sitting down here, I'm 57 years old, 67 years old. And I will be hearing this stuff in a taxi. And there are women in taxi, and I'm feeling embarrassed.
Because of the music they play?
Yes, because I am embarrassed, because I grew up. Certain things I couldn't say when I was a child, and as an adult, sometimes I don't curse. Because all curse was disrespect to women, all of them, right? But to say like damn or something like that, or even strips in front of her, no, I couldn't do that. But before you reach home, that news reached home already, you know. And back then there was no cell phone. There were no cell phones back then.
And you get some licks.
Yes, you get some licks. You're playing man, you strips in front of people. You ain't saying good morning or good evening or good afternoon. No, but today.
Oh, okay. So, talking about, so along the conversations, there's some things I'm curious to ask. Your altar, the one with fruits and, yeah, on that corner. Do you change the fruits often, or do you wait for them to go bad, dispose, and replace? I'm just curious because I really don't know how you do that.
Well, because number one, I'm a child of Oshun.
Yeah.
Right? So, I also eat from this altar.
You eat?
Yeah, I eat from this altar.
Oh, okay.
Right? There are some altars that you wouldn't eat from. Okay. But I'm a child of Oshun. Okay. And Oshun like to you to eat with her. Okay. Because according to the story, Oshun was once poisoned. Okay. So anytime you're offering anything to Oshun, you take like especially honey. Oshun loves honey. Oh, okay. So you take some first. Right? Okay. All right. You show that that you know it's not poison. It takes some first. So I eat from this, right? All right. And I love certain like the sugar cane, right? Yeah. So that's where I know that it's being consumed, because some entity, some energy that is sucking the moisture out of the sugar cane. Okay. So it's feeding something. Okay. And because I name the source, another source is taken because the sugar cane, like we say a long time when I was a child, water lie down, water stand up. And that's cane, right? And I some of the fruits I don't eat apples. Okay. So I do apples steady until they start to krill. Okay. But that's not going to happen in a hurry. So do you share it with your family, or it's just for you alone? No, we're familiar. But what usually happens is that, like when I'm closing down the marketplace, and stuff is still fresh, I may give it to some of the vendors. Okay, all right. Because it comes with the blessings of Oshun. Okay, all right, all right. Like I said, there are some altars, we call this a ebu, right? Okay. Some altars, you don't eat based on what it is for. Yeah. Because some altars is because you're asking for cleansing and stuff like that. Yeah. And then you don't eat of that. All right. This is not about that. All right. Okay. So one last question. Thank you so much first, because I've really learned a lot. There's a lot of things that you've said, and I'm like, never heard of this, or like, just like so much information. Thank you so much. But two questions. The first one. As a content creator personally, I do see sometimes, I do have a lot of people who also watch me from the Caribbean. And that's why I'd ask you a question about the Caribbean unity and all that, because I see a lot of times it's like an ego trip. Everyone trying to prove how they are better than the other, how they're better than the other, instead of like, coming together and, because one hand cannot clap. Right. It takes it takes two hands to clap. Yeah, so that's what I believe. So what do you think can be done to unite the Caribbean? And then second, what can be done to bridge the gap between Africa and the Caribbean? Okay. Yeah. I think the same answer applies to both questions. And always a common agenda. And once we have a common agenda, it's easier to bring about the unity of which we speak. And then you start the process now of doing things to make that happen. For instance, I spoke about Carifesta. Carifesta has a common agenda, which is the recognition of, the celebration of the arts. That's the agenda of Carifesta, right? And also, and what we can use the art now to do, because you see the art is very instrumental in building up a society. But most of the time they do not consult the artists. They will use the artists to promote certain things, but they don't consult the artists in doing of the thing, right? So when you look at the continent, a lot of things that we in the Caribbean are doing is assisting the continent. Because I said before, we are your elders. And because on the continent, they were more colonized than we were. Because they were colonized on their own land through their own systems, through the corruption of their own systems, right? And most of the time they didn't even know they were colonized because they kept on doing what they were doing all the time. But it's just that the chief who didn't own land started to own land. But what he was supposed to distribute certain things to make sure everybody have what they need. But then that was corrupted by the Europeans, right? So you have to go back to that common agenda. And that will speed up the process. That speed up the process of bringing us closer together, right? So like I said, the same answer applies to both places. We in the Caribbean, we are still grappling with whether we Africans or not. We're still grappling with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I spoke about the name. The name is a huge thing. Mm-hmm. The name is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Right? So once we start to look at all those things from that perspective,
yeah,
we start seeing how easy it is to bring about unity. Because we are not so, we have more in common than we have not in common.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. That's true.
But you have to recognize and appreciate the similarities and our differences.
Okay.
But you see what's happening in emancipation? Every year, we tend to have someone that's only coming from the continent come to emancipation.
Yeah.
And that brings about connections, right? So it is for us now to take that and build on it. Because we have a tendency to do things seasonally. What we doing, what was like on Sri Lanka for Carnival is certain things, and then after Carnival, it's no longer there, it goes back in like a box.
Okay.
But you're supposed to take those things and build on it. So we come out of the seasonal thing. Because in the downtime, momentum is lost. The passion is lost. But you have to keep that. So we speed up the process of, it's what's going there. That's our costume. Because tonight is Kings. Carnival Kings.
Oh,
right?
Oh, okay.
So the Carnival mentality is they will work right along the clock. Because the agenda is having the best costume that they can have.
Yeah.
Right? So part of that Carnival mentality, we have to live that 24/7 to get things done. Kwanzaa, you know Kwanzaa, of course.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, no Kwanzaa.
Kwanzaa, the main reason for Kwanzaa was to give us a sense of who we are. Number one is that we have an altar in our homes. Because the whole Canara, so that's an altar. But what happens is that we have this habit of doing everything through a Eurocentric paradigm. So we treat the Canara as a Christmas tree. We put it up and we take it down. So we defeat the purpose of Kwanzaa. So for a lot of people, Kwanzaa is a second Christmas. And that is not what it's about. The Goza Saba, you're not supposed to recite that after Boxing Day. You're supposed to live the principles.
Yeah.
So wake up in the morning. What's my nia? What's my purpose? You know? You live the principles throughout the day. So you use that as a framework. Right? To make yourself better, to become better who you are. Similarly, again, for the whole Caribbean unity thing, you have to live certain things. And I think that is going to bring about the unity that we're looking for. Right.
All right. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing everything that you've shared with us.
Welcome.
I'll definitely put a link. And in case you're watching this, if you want to contact him or reach out to him, you'll find the link and his phone number as well, the WhatsApp number in the description. So I hope you enjoyed this episode and you learned something new. And please, like I always say, make sure you hit the like button, share and subscribe. I always say sharing is caring. So go ahead and share this episode and I will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. All right.